Tiny crossovers are the hottest thing in cars right now, and any automaker that doesn't have one is really behind the times. So instead of investing all these R&D dollars into making its own small crossover, Infiniti is piggybacking off a Mercedes platform to come up with this, the QX30 Sport, which is essentially a rebadged and restyled GLA. I actually prefer the look of the Infiniti model over the GLA it's based on. The QX30 is much more stylish and a lot less generic, and it definitely looks more modern. The GLA has a beefier, boxier, and more muscular look, but I like the swoopy lines of this Infiniti. It all adds up to a small crossover that has the right proportions and looks really sharp, which is important for people shopping this segment that prioritize form over function. The problem with that really pretty design is that practicality takes a hit in terms of cargo capacity, room for your passengers, and sight lines, because one of the biggest problems with the QX30 is that it is pretty difficult to see out of. The blind spots are huge, the windows are tiny, and the windshield is so swept back that it doesn't give you a lot to work with. Luckily, this QX30 Sport, which is the fully loaded top-of-the-line model, is equipped with a rear-view camera along with a top-down 360-degree view camera, which makes parking and squeezing into tight places super easy. There are also sensors that help, and the system is smart because if it detects something in front of the car as you're slowing down to a crawl, it turns on the camera automatically, which is useful when you drive nose in to parking spots. Those compact dimensions mean that the QX30 is really easy to maneuver and it's a lot of fun to drive, and the stance gives it a nice planted feel. Although the 7-speed dual clutch transmission gets confused sometimes and can shift abruptly now and then, it's definitely not a deal breaker, and it actually feels better than the one you get in the GLA. And Infiniti got rid of Mercedes' annoying shifter that sits where the windshield wiper usually is. The QX30 is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that outputs 208 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. That's plenty to get the crossover moving, but the engine isn't the smoothest and it does display some turbo lag. The QX30 Sport doesn't get any more power than the regular QX30, but it gets upgraded brakes and a better suspension that is tuned for better handling. That sportier suspension does make the ride a little bit more choppy in the city, but it does mean that it is better in corners, which is an okay compromise in my books. The weird thing about this top-of-the-line QX30 Sport is that it isn't available with all-wheel drive, which seems like a missed opportunity. You actually have to level down to get all-wheel drive. I figure this was a move to keep price in check, especially because this Sport model has so many other features. I can imagine it getting pretty expensive if it had all-wheel drive. If you've ever driven a Mercedes before, some things in here might look very familiar, but that is not a bad thing. Although if you've ever driven the GLA before, you'll know that that cabin isn't the best at giving you the best luxury experience, and it's pretty much the same thing in this cabin. Some of the materials used in here are definitely on the cheaper side, and there are some flimsy plastics used in some places, but looks-wise, it is quite pretty. I really like this asymmetrical layout of the dashboard, and these two-tone seats are really cool. One downside is that the cabin is pretty noisy, especially on the highway and during hard acceleration. I also think the dashboard could be simplified and made easier to use. You can use this little rotary knob to control the infotainment, which is a little bit frustrating because it's not very intuitive, but luckily you do have the option of using the touchscreen too. You can also get a technology package that adds features like all the driver assistance and safety features that include things like adaptive cruise control and automatic emergency braking. Despite all those minor issues, the Infiniti QX30 is a fantastic little car that is stylish, drives great, and is better than the Mercedes it shares a platform with. I do wish though that this top-line model did have all-wheel drive because it would make it a more complete crossover package.